What's going on, everyone? My name is Nicholas Merton here at Data Dash, and today is July 12th of 2019. Well, folks, I hope you are having a fantastic day wherever you are, and in today's video, we've got to spend some time talking about all the people who are talking about crypto. It seems in the last 24 to 48 hours, crypto has been the topic of the hour for a lot of prominent figures in the United States, from President Donald Trump, from Fed Chairman Jay Powell, and even Mark Cuban. So I want to spend some time to get their thoughts on Bitcoin, Libra, and a lot of other related topics, and also talk about what all this tells in the big picture, because I think a lot of people have been missing that. And outside of that as well, guys, we are going to have a sponsored review of KuCoin, the cryptocurrency exchange that many of you might be familiar with. So if you guys are interested in that, stick around towards the end of the video. We've got lots to discuss, so let's go ahead and jump right into it. So as we take a look across the board here, most cryptocurrencies, again, are in neutral territory. This is coming off of a nice rebound we've had over the last few hours, as Bitcoin and other altcoins were in pretty severe red territory. A lot of players in double-digit territory. And you can still see for the past 7 days, there are very few players in the green. Again, most are in double-digit territory to the downside. This has been following our correction as we were retesting back up towards the $13,000 range, down to the mid $11,000 range for Bitcoin. So very understandable. Along with that as well, it seems like oh, actually the logos got fixed. That's good. That was originally, I was looking at the logos on the list here, and they were not matching with the coins. But I will say though, I'm still positive in my position that I've added in Chainlink and in Basic Attention Token. I'll let you guys know if I'm adding any more to my altcoin positions, but for now I've got enough exposure. All right, so we're not going to do any price analysis today, guys. There's nothing too much to really analyze. Again, I've given you guys my key levels that I'm watching for Bitcoin to either get back above before I average in, or for it to decline past. I want to spend some time to obviously talk about whether you love them or you hate them, guys. This is probably one of the most significant individuals to speak about cryptocurrencies, because it's a very powerful position. If you know anything about the current state of the U.S. economy compared to other economies, and also the role of the president, for one sole individual, you do have a lot of individual power. So I think we have to listen to what he says, at the same time be able to criticize it. And that's the beautiful thing about the First Amendment. We can also call out where we disagree, and also where there might be some point. And also, I think I'm really going to be spending some time to extract from this. Again, I don't want to get political, guys. I really just want to actually focus on what this tweet actually tells us in the broader sense. Again, getting to the main point that I want to allude to earlier. All right, so this is yet again, like most people on Twitter, sometimes people go on Twitter storms and they have a multitude of tweets. So these are the 3 tweets we need to look at. So Trump starts off by saying, "I'm not a fan of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies which are not money, and whose value is highly volatile and based on thin air. Unregulated crypto assets can facilitate unlawful behavior, including drug trade and other illegal activity." Now, I know many of you are already probably, bashing your heads and stuff in disagreement, but we'll come back to it. Similarly, Facebook's Libra virtual currency will have, and I like how at least he calls it a virtual currency, not a cryptocurrency. You win points for that, Trump. Will have little standing or dependability. If Facebook and other companies want to become a bank, they must seek a new banking charter and become subject to all banking regulations, just like other banks, both national and international. We have only one real currency in the USA, and it is stronger than ever, both dependable and reliable. It is by far the most dominant currency anywhere in the world, and it will always stay that way. It's called the United States dollar. All right, so guys, I think we already know right off the bat, you're probably already saying a lot of these things to yourself as I've been reading through this, that the vast majority of criminal trade utilizes US dollars because it's much better to use untraceable peer-to-peer cash that's physical and untraceable in digital systems than using something like Bitcoin, which is on an immutable ledger that will be there on tens of thousands of copies across the world and will likely exist forever. Right? Once you make a transaction on the Bitcoin network, it will be there forever. You will not be able to remove it so long as the miners are continuing to run their machines. And the government, through organizations like Chain Analysis, other corporate entities that expand their knowledge on the ledger, taking KYC data, know exactly, in many cases, who owns what. Okay, so not good for criminal trade. And I really don't think this is a good time tweet, because we just saw a vessel that was owned by JP Morgan Assets, trying to move in about $1 billion worth of cocaine, one of the biggest drug raids in history. And I can tell you they weren't using cryptocurrencies, okay? Now, the one thing that I want to talk about here that really stands out is his statements on the Libra. And talking about how, they're going to have to be standard compliant with all banking regulations. Look, guys, I understand. We've heard this from the European Central Bank, the Bank of England. We've heard this from all kinds of individuals, even people in the traditional financial sector that, they're like, look, if you want to step in this ballpark, you're going to have to follow regulations. But the thing I get from this is that I'm finally like, it's becoming obviously clear. I've thought about this for a while, but there's really three sides to this war, guys. We are entering in, and it's compounding very quickly. People are finally learning about it. They're speaking up about it. There is a war going on in currencies, and it's going to be shaping up going into 2020 to 2030. I think this is going to be the decade of currency wars. Now, what I mean by this? Well, there's really three sides. You have international governments like the United States who, as Trump stated, depend on the U.S. dollar. They depend on the U.S. dollar for a lot of economic strength. Now, it's not to say that they wouldn't do well with Bitcoin, but the thing is, through the ability to control currency, Trump, as well as the Fed, in this case, through Jay Powell and the other cohorts who work in the Fed, they are able to do very interesting things. They're able to increase or decrease the currency supply. They're able to increase the cost of money or decrease it in order to stimulate or enter into a hawkish tone on the market, expecting the market to mature and be able to handle higher interest rates or lower capital injection through QE or other types of methods. And that gives a lot of power to governments and central banks across the world. But, that's just one player in the ballpark now, because there's two other players. There's corporate cryptocurrencies. There's Facebook and its consortium that work alongside it in creating Libra. And there are other different types of companies across the world who I have no doubt are looking to create their own cryptocurrencies, like JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs. We've known about this for a while. Whether it's individual companies or a consortium, there are going to be corporate cryptocurrencies or cryptocurrencies. I like how he called virtual currencies. I appreciate it. It seems like he knows a little bit about it. So I will say this, there's those two players, but then there's the third player as well, which is us, the people who have been a part of the revolution that started it all, that was seen as crazy and, out there and thinking, hey, maybe you should be autonomous over your money. Maybe you should be autonomous over your value. And I know a lot of people talk, it sounds very libertarian utopian, guys. And I'm not even a full-blooded libertarian or anarchist, definitely not an anarchist. But I will say this, there is a few things in this world that deserve absolute autonomy and freedom. That is the freedom of speech. You should be able to say, whatever you're feeling at the moment, no matter how irrational, no matter how much people might disagree with you, you have that right as a human. There's a reason you're given vocal cords to speak and to sing as well, if you have a good voice. Some of us are probably not good at singing, but you have that right as a human. You should have those rights. And along with that as well, when we talk about speech, we have to understand about the monetary value of speech, and that is money. We need to be able to transmit value as we please. I believe that's something that people should have autonomy over. Sometimes it's inefficient. Sometimes, again, I think that you do have worries of money being used for illicit activities, as Trump alluded to. But switching from cash from international governments to Bitcoin isn't going to fix that. Those are societal issues. People spending money on things that probably aren't in the better interest of themselves or society. That's something we have to address on a social level, right? I mean, the war on drugs has proved that. Any war on anything has proven that. It's not something you imply with force. You get to the root cause of it. Sadly, I would say that's probably one of the few things about the U.S. that I dislike. I love a lot of things about the U.S., but we're so gun-ho in a sense on trying to put patches on things. We don't get to the source of why things happen sometimes. And again, I'm going on a tangent here. Anyways, I'm just trying to give some good thought into what Trump's saying here, because as much as I think, honestly, I think as with any president, as much as I do believe there are cynical aspects to the government, I think honestly Trump in this case was responding to this due to what Jay Powell talked about, and we'll talk about Jay in a second. And honestly, he's just basically stating in this case that he believes the U.S. dollar is going to reign supreme because of the fact that cryptos are volatile. But I think Trump is missing the point that this isn't just used for illicit activities. It is not going away anytime soon. Cryptocurrencies, as you noted, he didn't mention need to get a banking license. They will be around no matter what. And along with that as well, that cryptocurrencies are going to be the solution to the Fed's mismanagement of monetary policy that he has complained about many times beforehand. So again, I've rambled on about that, guys. Let's go ahead and talk about what Jay Powell has to say now. So I have to say, out of most Fed chairmen, I was actually joking about this because someone said my voice was soothing like Jay Powell. And, Jay Powell does have a very soothing voice for Fed chairman. You can just listen to him all day, talking about economic policy, GDP. Oh, talk to me, Powell. All right, anyways. So, so Jay Powell actually came out and said something that's actually probably the most positive thing a central banker has said. Now, we have some people who testify to the Senate or the Congress and tend to say some things that they probably regret later. But, from the ECB to the Bank of England, where we've heard nothing but negative things about cryptocurrencies, and that's mentioned People's Bank of China and the Chinese government, who is outright trying to censor cryptocurrencies at all costs. Now, the Fed chairman has actually come out and said that Bitcoin is a speculative store of value. Now, bear in mind, speculative is probably a little bit of a non-positive term, but they did say, Jay said in this case, that it is seen as a store of value like gold, adding weight to the safe haven theory. This is really exciting. So again, Powell was testifying yesterday, discussed, he answered a lot of questions for Congress, but inevitably the topic of cryptocurrencies had come up. And I think this is going to be more of a topic of discussion, but inevitably this is going to lead towards a question here. A lot of people have obviously been buying into Bitcoin as a hedge here. It's becoming aware that being the best performing asset of 2019 and having a very short window of time in Bitcoin's price history where you'd actually technically be down on your money, on paper, right? From buying at a higher level. It is definitely looking like it could be a store of value, especially if we break past 20,000 and continue throughout this year. So, again, this is coming at a time where the Fed seems to be one of the only banks that's talking relatively positive about it. We just heard from the European Central Bank that they're not even considering buying Bitcoin as a hedge. They don't see it as a store of value. And who knows, maybe the Fed, which is already at a really strong position, might be one of the first banks to add Bitcoin to its balance sheet. That would be extremely exciting. I don't really like a central bank owning any of the Bitcoin supply. I'd love them to just hold fiat and treasuries and all kinds of government bonds and collapse into oblivion and not hold any relevancy when a new monetary system rises. But you know what? If there had to be one central bank who had it, I'd like the U.S. Central Bank to have it because I live in the U.S. and I'd like them to own some Bitcoin. All right. Again, I think the funny quote here I got from a tweet from Max Kaiser is, "Give me Bitcoin or give me gold." He just put this out a few minutes before I was recording, and I love this. Again, we're getting some really cool options, guys, to be autonomous in this world. I think it's really exciting. And starting off with money and, getting acquainted with the internet and platforms where you can truly speak your mind. Those are the first two steps to being truly autonomous and truly free, in my opinion. Now, going here to talk about our third figure and someone who, guys, like I admire him in a lot of regards. But at the same time, I think Mark Cuban can talk a little bit. Mark Cuban had called Facebook's digital coin Libra a big mistake, saying it could be dangerous. And I wouldn't say it's so much dangerous. I just think it's going to be a failure. And I'll explain. I get Mark's point on this. So he said he's not a big fan of what they're doing, and basically talked, about criticizing Libra in the aspect that he believes that this is going to be more of an issue on the international level. So let's go ahead and read some of his quotes. There's going to be some despot in some African country that gets really upset that they can't control their currency anymore, and that's where the real problems start occurring. So I don't think this is, before this even becomes an issue for that, I completely agree with Mark Cuban on this. I don't think it's so much going to be much of a mistake. I think that this is not even going to be able to happen because we're already seeing European Central Bank, Bank of England, Central Bank of the United States. One thing we didn't talk about with Powell is that he's, talking about how these, corporate cryptocurrencies are going to have to be regulated under central banks. At the end of the day, I don't even think that problem is going to come because they're going to be shut off before they can even get in the hands of people over there. But I do agree with Mark. If it turns out that they get far enough to where they can actually get it out into the hands of people and it gets shut off, that's the problem, right? And that's why I think Mark, along with many billionaires, have started to realize that Bitcoin is very valuable, because so long as someone has a mobile wallet with their cryptocurrency on it, you own that money. There is no government that can remove the Bitcoin from your address. They can't knock on the door of the operations of the miners and the Bitcoin network and say, hey, could you just kind of reverse that transaction, or maybe freeze that money, or maybe send it to our central bank address? They can't do that. And that's extremely powerful. And again, you can think there's negative connotations to that, but I think everyone should have autonomous nature, an autonomous anonymity, or sorry, not anonymity. They should be autonomous in owning their own money, as with how they use the internet, right? You should be able to speak your mind, be able to engage with people on the internet as you please. And most people in the world, 99.9%, are doing good things. They're just going about their day, same as you would be with doing monetary transactions. So money should be no different, and the internet should be no different, right? It should be autonomous in nature, and we should be able to exchange peer-to-peer, which is what cryptocurrencies are all about. Now, another thing as well, speaking towards Mark's fears here, there is actually a little bit of an experiment. And interestingly enough, Quartz did an article on this, talking about how Facebook's Libra wasn't the only, corporate or virtual currency in a sense. Now, we've had corporate currencies in the past. In the early 1900s, most banks and companies had their own currencies. Not, I would say most, but a lot of them had their own currencies. And the KuCoin, which is a subsidiary in Tencent, is one of the first actual experiments. Now, it was a stable coin to the Chinese yuan. And as you go through the article here, it was basically, seeing as it was one yuan, it was basically averaging around 15 cents. And people could use it to buy all kinds of virtual services through QQ. So, and through Tencent's applications as well. But the interesting thing about it is that, as many people fear with Facebook's Libra, in January of 2007, China's central bank declared a crackdown on the QQ coins. And what inevitably happened was the price rose 70% within weeks, because they were fearful that it was being used to facilitate money laundering. Now, do we know that or not? I don't know. I'll be honest, I haven't dug deep enough into this case. I'd like to look a little bit more into it. But at the end of the day, this proves one thing. Centralized systems can only go so far until until Libra becomes permissionless and open source and completely untouchable, rather than run by a consortium. Then it is not going to be better than Bitcoin. It might provide stability. It might provide, a stable store of value because it's backed by US treasuries or other government treasuries or currencies. But it is never going to be stable if someone can push a button and freeze your transactions. If a government says you can't use it the way you'd like, or maybe we find you to be a suspicious actor and we're going to freeze your account or force Facebook to do it. That's the problem here, folks. It is, again, I know it sounds so philosophical in nature, but it's actually game theory. It's strategy. It's the reality of what makes Bitcoin different from other currencies. And it has that autonomous, immutable nature to it that makes it so powerful. It is Pandora's box. There is a lot of good that's going to come out of it. There's some bad maybe, but that's what I say to President Trump and Jay Powell and Mark Cuban, or anyone out there, who is, I would say, an influential figure on the world. I would love, of course I know it would probably never happen. I would love to sit down for an hour and explain cryptocurrencies to someone like Trump, or someone, for example, and I think this is something that I think is very important here, guys. I know people get very political and they're like, some people are possibly disappointed to hear Trump say this because they're big fans of him. Some people as well are just like, there goes Trump again, people just railing on Trump. But the thing is, I think Caitlin Long here not only made a great response, she's a big advocate of crypto in Wyoming, really wonderful person. But along with that, she pointed out something here. Your staff is misleading you. I think with a lot of these figures, guys, we have to understand someone like Trump is doing a dozen different things every day, and he's probably not well versed in cryptocurrencies because his staff is not made up of anyone who's extremely knowledgeable in cryptocurrencies. The only person who had some knowledge of crypto and might have taught him anything was Steve Bannon, and he would have actually had a very positive nature. He believes that cryptocurrencies are very valuable. He was actually, in fact, working with Brock Pierce, who's pretty high up with EOS, in the early days when he was getting in the business of virtual coins and video games and things of that sort. He's been a partner, an investor of Brock Pierce for a while. So he was one of the few people who might have understood it. However, he's not in administration anymore. So maybe Trump just needs to get another perspective on it, right? It's something that I think, again, I think he would like, because he has a lot of disagreements with the Fed. And along with that, I think he if he really is the anti-establishment president, he will want to go through and actually try to combat the banking system, which has obviously destroyed the middle class. It is, corrupted the entire economy, blown up asset bubbles for a select few people who are invested in them, and has left all of us with inflated currency and depreciated savings. It's not a good system. And that's why we need Bitcoin, because in a Bitcoin economy, savers are rewarded. Long-term thinkers and spenders are rewarded. So anyways, that's it for my ranting and raving, guys. Thank you all so much for watching. If you guys have any comments you want to leave them down in the comments down below. If you guys love this video, give it a like. I appreciate it as always. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing and hitting the bell icon so you don't miss another video here on the channel. So let's go ahead, guys. Let's dive into it and talk a little bit about KuCoin. Alrighty, everyone. So taking a look over KuCoin, we'll start off by taking a look at the markets tab here, and we can see that it kind of covers a wide range of things. You not only have a lot of the key data for some of the distributions that we'll talk about later on KuCoin, but along with that, the news that's going on, some general announcements from KuCoin as an exchange, and also some price data in regards to the performers in the market, from the top gainers to the top losers. Now, the one thing I want to focus in on here is actually their soft staking. So this is one of the functions on KuCoin that is actually kind of unique comparative to most exchanges. As many of you might know, whether you're invested in altcoins or you've just known about the topic of proof of stake as a consensus mechanism, there is a lot of rewards given to users who are just simply holding the coin. And a lot of exchanges don't give you those distributions, or they don't take advantage of having a lot of the supply all in one place to actually stake. Well, in KuCoin, in this case, they're actually giving away staking rewards. So for a variety of well-known currencies, from Cosmos, which has really blown up this year, to EOS, Tron, IOST, Nebula, which we've talked about, Deep Onion, Energy, and Nulls, which are all pretty popular staking cryptocurrencies, you'll be able to actually get soft staking returns by just having your money in the exchange in this case. Now, again, if you want to opt out of this and stuff, again, I recommend you read into the documentation for it. I think in that case, you have to kind of move it off the exchange. It's one of the benefits of KuCoin that you're actually earning this. It's no different in the sense of security, really, from someone storing your funds on an exchange. But in this case, they're actually sharing the rewards, which is kind of cool. So you're getting some kind of consistent passive and growth in regards to your currency while you're just holding it on the exchange. And again, this is just for staking currencies that they support here. They do plan to support more down the road, but I think this is a really interesting feature, and it's good to see, I think, as a benefit comparative to exchanges like Binance and other players that might not always give you staking rewards. That's one thing I'd be concerned about. So outside of that, if we take a look here as well, one thing that a lot of people are still just becoming aware of is one of their new services called CuMEX. Now, this is very similar in a sense to derivatives trading platforms that are out there for cryptocurrencies. So you guys might know about, BitMEX, or you might know about OneFox. This is very similar nature, where it allows you to actually trade crypto derivatives. So you'll be able to, not only trade on margin, but be able to trade, basically contracts on Bitcoin. Now, each contract is $1, and along with this, as well as standard with any kind of derivatives platform, they have an insurance fund. So again, I think the layout looks nice here. It's very clean, not as overwhelming as BitMEX and a lot of the other exchanges out there that have provided a relatively similar service. And also go into a dark mode here for the overall layout. And again, you can transfer funds as well if you already have a KuCoin account into your CuMEX account for free. So transfers for that are completely free. They don't charge for it, which is really exciting. Along with that, it's important to note that they're actually utilizing 6 major cryptocurrency exchanges in regards to price data to formulate the index for the derivatives. So it's very interesting that they've actually gone about doing this in a very professional manner. I'm interested to see if they'll get a user base going over time to compete with the likes of BitMEX and some of the other major derivatives platforms in crypto. But overall, I gotta say KuCoin has definitely improved on its layout. It looks a lot cleaner from the early days. Not to mention, they have definitely offered a basket more of cryptocurrencies over the past few months. So if you guys are interested, check out the links down below, figure out what KuCoin is all about, and consider registering for an account if you can. But until the next video, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Stay tuned.